DRDO had just started the Center for Sustainable Technologies in its earlier avatar called Application of Science and Technology to Rural Areas. Of course, I was a novice, and I really got charmed and I got in. And I thought I'll share some of the experience as to how we have started. And we started on something on sustainability when nobody talked sustainability. Talked about resilience and livelihoods much before the world even started talking about it. And we went into the field and started working on problems which needed sustainable technologies. So I thought I'll share some of these things, what happened and how I see historically over this period. I also teach sustainability, and when I give an assignment, the first thing done by most of the students are they hit the internet and you find the Venn diagram, and then you will find that economics, the environment, and finally social. So the Venn diagram clearly puts out the order that if it is not economically quote unquote viable, don't even talk further, don't go further. So anything that you decide about resilience, which is more social in nature, which is more about people, that automatically goes out of the window. Again, when we talk about technology, it's a very funny thing that we have found. And I'm doing some work, and suddenly find I found something interesting. Then I start finding an application for it. So we call these things a solution that is looking for a problem. Because I have a solution in hand, I don't know who is going to use it. So when we start with a solution and then start looking for a problem, most often the choices automatically get biased, so we have a limited scope. We try to extend the use of things, especially if you look at the building codes that are coming. The lead building code is just a copy of what is in the West, and that's why you have so much glass here. The weather here does not permit glass. Again, now the third and most funny thing that's happening today is the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, has been prioritized outside our system. And I was in a committee which was trying to tell how Karnataka is meeting the 17 SDG goals. So each goal had a committee. One committee did not know what the other committee talking about. But we were very clearly saying, okay, can we match Sustainable Development Goal 9A, 6 something, 6C, how much we have done, how many what they call open defecation villages, if you are looking at sanitation, how many are rural water supplies. I also heard a mayor in Reno talking about how to meet the sustainability of their town. Their problem was opposite. They were looking at how many obese teenagers are there for 1,000 population. So, I mean, what is the percentage of obesity? They were not looking for food security. So we are unable to translate sustainability in the terms that we think we should be doing, although we might be guided by a much larger principle. And how technology and the perpetrators of technology are changing this, I thought I'll use it. I will state this with an example of the Bangalore and Mysore area, especially on the wastewater, what happened. From now onwards, the slides are going to be bad. It is written in English, but I will translate it for you. I mean the word. It's okay. First one was that around the 1930s and between 1910 and 1930, when the underground drainage started coming into these large cities of Bangalore and Mysore, nobody knew what to do with sewage. But people realized that here is a resource that has to be used sustainably, and nobody talked about it. So what happened was they created the biggest challenge for sewage was how do you prevent the pathogen from reinfecting the population, and that was the challenge. So they made sure that the sewage is used for growing fodder crops. The fodder was used for milk, brought back to the town for the cows and milk. Milk and dung went back to the farm. The dung and the other waste products went to the farm. Again, the milk came to the city. So this was, when you talk about circular economy, you have a wonderful example of a circular economy. If you're looking at resource conservation, it's wonderful here. But people were also concerned, how do you, till about 70s, 1970, mid-70s, Bangalore city did not have a wastewater treatment system. Now, I was also wondering why we didn't have a wastewater treatment system. Apparently, there were a large number of people who are working on wastewater and told the government there is really no need of treating your wastewater. Every 100 meters or 200 meters, since you have such a large slope, create a drop of 1 foot. It aerates, and by the time it reaches 5 kilometers outside the city, your water is treated. It was a fantastic technology, sustainable technology of that period. The nutrients went to the fields. Now let's see what happens in 1985. A large number of people congregate and say, no, Bangalore needs a wastewater treatment system. So I have a specialty, I have an expertise, so I impose my expertise on you and then give into the solution. So what happened, we had our state council and a lot of people started looking, what do we do? And that's also the high period of anaerobic digestion. When we said, look, there's going to be a lot of biogas, so we'll make power. They brought in aero engines, used aero engines, which are condemned from flying but still operational. So they could raise about 2 megawatts of power. The extra biogas went into about 5,000 persons, not 5,000 houses, 5,000 persons household in the neighborhood. And the water went back to raising irrigation and vegetables, which was needed. Now, the anaerobic biogas plants is a low investment technology. There is no IP on that. So nobody has a brand that you can use. So it doesn't get promoted like, say, any other brand of other technologies. So this, and it is poorly, you can't market it. So this never went forward. And within a very short time, when in the next phase, our water supply system started hiring something called the consultants who told what has to be done. Obviously, when you take UNDP money, you have to hire a consultant who will, of course, do what is required, required in quotes. So the consultants made sure that you take technologies that are, quote unquote, market friendly, which means there's a lot of, in terms of investment wise, it is less, but in terms of operation, you are always dependent on that. So we brought in something called the activated sludge process. You aerate on the surface, and that consumes a lot of power. Most of the cities which used ASPs could not pay the electricity bill at some point of time. But we still did, and it was shown that we are going to buy land, so we'll minimize the land part of it. So the decisions by the water supply and sewage board consultant optimized for land costs and not for larger good. So I now the whole concept of corporate management and the profit on single-minded duration profit sets in. Sorry, I went back. Okay. Now this was not enough. That when we went to the next stage, when the aerated lagoons, more modern versions started coming in, if you look at this, how this was decided, one was, of course, the land cost, because they said they were talking, I have to buy land, so I'll minimize the cost. But then you see, they were trying to push clear water out, and they also said, we'll put a tertiary system. I will get rid of these pollutants. Nitrogen and phosphorus, which we put in the plants upstream, becomes a pollutant here. So it's treated as something bad. We produce a sludge which is sent to the hazardous waste thing. So this approach to technology comes from the fact that you have told me I have to treat water. Don't ask more questions. So how you put these questions to the technology becomes important. So when we optimize these, something like 15-20 plants which we have here, all of them either used forced aeration or surface aeration, and the highest returns the consultant made sure goes back to the company which is installing and maintaining it. What are you talking about resilience? Nothing. This is the one that is deciding. So the outputs which we are supposed to create a circular economy. We started with that. Now becomes a waste that has to be treated. So in 2005, I think that's when the foam in the Great Bellandur Lake starts to first appears. I think it's international news, as if no sewage across the world foams, and as if no sewage across the world is black in color. Others are white in color. Only Bangalore sewage is black. Bangalore sewage foams. It comes to international news. It's in New York Times, because of course in Bangalore there is no politics, so visa is more important. But what happens? Simultaneously, there's a bogey that this black sewage is toxic. And you discover heavy metals in that. You discover heavy metals that can't exist in that place. In sewage, I mean, if people know the system becomes anaerobic, it produces hydrogen sulfide. Almost every heavy metal precipitates down. So what comes in the clear water could be black, but it's not toxic. It, at least definitely not from heavy metals. But why is heavy metal thing getting stuck? Every month one issue comes on heavy metal found somewhere in this sewage, somewhere in that sewage. Then this is my analysis, that simultaneously MBR also was ready, membrane bioreactors. Membrane is a solution, we didn't know where to use it. So let's now start using it for treated water. We'll treat sewage water, you can drink it, after the membrane. So clear. What happens by this? The technology is fantastic. What happens after this? The water now paying through your nose, because it takes 3 kilowatt hours to treat 1 cubic meter of or kiloliter of water, and it costs about 6 crores to install per MLD. We installed at 6 crores. Now the cost has come down. So operating cost is about 30 to 40 rupees per kiloliter, even today. So what do? I don't sell it to irrigation. I started selling it to somebody else. So what we never think about greater good. I only think of how do I maximize the profit into the system. So you see, the whole thing is geared for more membranes being sold, more clients, and the water treated is going somewhere else, not to now recycling, and the sludge becomes a hazardous waste. I have committed a sin. I'll pay somebody so that through CSR it will take care of all my sins. So the more turnover, more replacement, this is optimized for that kind of a system. But Europe has suddenly realized that they have really ruined the system by adding this going in this approach. So now they're going for a wastewater treatment system in which they will not add any chemicals. So chemical-free sewage treatment is the order of the day. This is exactly what we were doing almost 100 years back. And so the world is going back and asking these cycles. And it is here we can show lessons how we have handled. In the Kutanad, how we were dealing with water hyacinth also, there is a lot of traditional knowledge about how do we deal with water hyacinth. Today we are not following many of them, and so you really get a lot of water weeds. So what we showed in 2008, I just corrected it for this particular year. Bangalore city sends out every day 150 tons of nitrogen, about 70 tons of phosphorus, and 120 tons of methane is not harvested. We showed that if you can remove the carbon through anaerobic digestion and collect it as bio-CNG, which is what the government is now subsidizing, and you put it into a lake. Now the lake does two things. It picks up whatever it can. It also acts as a buffer, because we are getting water from the Kaveri. The cost of bringing it to Bangalore is 30 rupees a kiloliter. The next water source is 70 rupees a kiloliter per 1,000 litre. Of course, you don't see these kind of costs in Kerala. But you also have nutrients you have to worry about. So this is the kind of problem that we. So in the second place, we can either grow algae, and we have grow fish. So which is what you would be interested in, to make sure that the nutrients you send out is harvested back into a form that can be useful, and you're also addressing pollution simultaneously. So we can look at agriculture and horticulture, meet about close to 50,000 hectares. So the reason why when we deal with sustainable technologies, the reason why this problem is happening is the first choice in the technology filter that we put in, especially in modern day sustainability filter, sustainable technology, is economic. The moment you find it's not going to give you profit, you say sorry, you come back once you show profit. So anybody who is developing technology will automatically get dissuaded. And after that, should you by chance manage to show the profit, then you ask for the environmental filter. Now I don't have an environmental solution, so what do? For example, the membranes. I produce as hazardous waste. Okay, I'll give some cost, I'll allocate some cost so that somebody will handle the pollution. So you do shadow costing, and of course, social, after all this is built, then I'll put CSR so that society is taken care of. Now you look at, if you're looking at resilience, what you will need to do is to put the filters in the opposite direction. You first make sure that you have environmental, which obviously it's important. And so that clearly talks about sustainability of the resources. Then you talk about social, you put the social filter and then say, does it meet the greater good? Are you addressing all those issues which the previous speaker spoke about? Then you ask the business person, look, these are the criteria. Can you find niche market, a business for this? Can you tweak the business instead of tweaking the technology? See, nowhere in this system, the economist tweaks anything. I mean, not economist as an economist, but the market person. He says, this is my fixed ROI. This is my returns, depreciation I want to look for. If you have a technology, give it to me. He's doing you a favor. The technology should ask the other way around. We have these technologies. Can you find a business to run on this? And this is what we are asking. How do you tweak the businesses so that it will still function? And then the choices becomes more towards resilience. We are trying to do something like this. We had about 400 water bodies in the city of Bangalore itself. Now it's dwindled to something like 80. The sewage is to enter upstream and fill up the lake. What we have done is we created a diversion, and towards the deepest end, we have put a treatment system, which is a 3-stage treatment system. And what is the evaporation loss? Only that much would enter the lake, and rest would go downstream. So even with raw sewage, you would be putting in roughly passively treated water into the lake. The lake acts as a buffer. So first thing what we do is once we put a walkway and a place where children and adults can get together and watch these birds, then you have people talking and say, okay, can we work on these assets jointly? So you have a system in place. The water becomes a buffer for where water shortages are there. So your water security is addressed. It automatically recharges groundwater. It efficiently uses all the carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus. It is a ground. There are about 400 birds that are breeding in there. Different types, about 60 species are there. And today we have about 60 students who are from a college, neighboring college, whose environment assignment is to look at different aspects of this lake. So they're learning their environment issues upfront here instead of taking an assignment and copying it down from the internet. When we started, just like you spoke about the earlier one, our founding fathers created these rules and saying that if any technology that you want to create should maximize the use of local resources, then only it can be sustainable. And it should address the removal of drudgery while also increasing human dignity. Sustainable Development Goals never talks about this part as a technology increasing human dignity. This is the first place that you find. And using technology should also empower, and that could be measured. That should be measurable, because we also talked about gender issues. It should build resilience endogenously, which means I don't depend on the outside. Do I create endogenous resilience? Can we build this kind of capability in the technology that you do? When you deal with flood disaster, you also ask, can the society endogenously address this? Do you need outside people to come? So, and of course, environmentally and socially sound. So these are the things that we raised. And one of the things that we also were told, people have knowledge. They have addressed this problem for over 100 years. Just because you have a degree, it doesn't mean that you have a better solution. You evaluate that with this and say, okay, why did that last so long? And how yours will be better. So only when you pit them against each other with a more human touch, you understand, you also incorporate traditional knowledge in the system. And last slide. So this was the take home, what I thought for the higher education system. One of the things that we find is we are training people to innovate, but we don't train them, we don't introduce them to a systemic understanding. When I teach biotechnology, I only look at managing 1 or 2 genes in one single species and how do I maximize a particular enzyme output. I don't look at much larger, I have not even thought about it. So if you can, so no innovator looks into the system until the technology is ready, and then into the latest part of the innovation cycle, then you ask these questions. When I go to the bank, when I ask people, look, they will ask you, oh, how does it address social goals? So till then one doesn't think. If you think upfront, then the filter itself will be, and your technologies will be a little more addressing the resilient. And This is because the potential innovators that we are treating are training are never exposed to a system-based thought. Never in that, and nowhere in our syllabus do we do it. Perhaps it's only learned extracurricularly. If you can think of putting those thoughts early in their training, then when you think of a technology, you look at a system as well. Since we keep these two aside, we think innovation is something you do in the lab, and invention you do in the lab, and then you take it forward, you do something called innovation. And then, of course, everything is hunky-dory. It's not really so. What I think most AICTE and all these people have, and I think UGC also has put that environment as a non-graded course. What we have gone ahead is taken a couple of colleges, and then said, okay, you're going to do an environment assignment, but you're not going to copy anything from the internet. You're going to work at a local problem. One example is the lake. The earlier one we use something else, a remote forest. You go there, make a study, you share amongst yourselves. So you are now beginning to address that you are capable of handling local problems. You're going to meet people from all walks of life. So you're going to get much broader understanding of solving problems, not merely a technical technologist's approach to that. So you will reverse this problem of solution looking for a problem. And I think this is how you will get the low-hanging fruit if you put this as an assignment. And the assignment in this case here, that these fellows will make a 10-minute movie of their findings. Just a 10-minute movie, and the college will integrate that and show it as a prize. There's no written exam to pass. But their communicating skills, they're addressing a local problem, how they addressed it becomes an important thing. And I think it's a possible approach if you can influence them we were able to influence a large number of educators to move to this. So local issues, we need to create in our education system, how do we increase the content of local issues within the science, technology examples that we give. I also talk about bioremediation. The only examples of bioremediation I have it from the US. For example, chromium toxicity has to be removed from the groundwater. How do I treat it? Only thing you will find is either in UK or in Europe, US or Europe. In fact, in India, we have done many places, and how the locals interacted, if you add them instead of those examples, we are actually seeing something that we can solve here. And it's our problem, we can solve, people have solved it here. So we had a problem of chromium tank breaking down. Anyway, there's a lot of acid, so the concrete disappeared below. It went into groundwater. We depended on groundwater, and now it has created a plume roughly 3 kilometers wide and 8 kilometers long, and it's moving in the direction. So since I also sit on the pollution control board, we made it that you have an environmental liability, you're going to pump and treat. It has been a success story now almost 8 years. Like this, there are many such places which we can show examples from here. When we show examples from India, especially on environment, and you create a sense of resilience that there is a problem, we can solve a problem. I close down here. I think at this level, you can take home saying that if we bring in more content from within India, you talked about disasters. It doesn't come in a textbook. And how are we building our next generation to be resilient if you say, I need things from the outside? I'll stop here. Thank you very much.